Well, hello there, Kerry and Deborah and Nicholas. Thank you so much. I think it's great that the four of us have this wonderful opportunity to get together so we can speak about a topic. The topic is mindfulness for wellness. And the reason why I think that we should introduce this topic and put it out there is because so many people are curious about mindfulness. So many practitioners are actually using mindfulness for wellness. So I think it would be really helpful for those who listen to us so they can get an idea, and if they really wanted to reach out and clarify anything, they can get in contact with us afterwards. In the meantime, Nick, I know that you wanted to mention something about mindfulness first, so let us know what you wanted to say.
Okay, well, let's first clarify what mindfulness means. And mindfulness is a strategy that's used to help people to better understand and manage their thoughts and their emotions that are occurring in any given moment that may cause them discomfort. And mindfulness is a tool that is very clearly, the evidence shows that it allows people to achieve relief from those feelings of distress. Now, there's an interesting little thing, and diving straight into it, there's a little interesting acronym that I use that is well known to some and not so well known to others, and it's called the STOP acronym. And when someone becomes aware of their thoughts and feelings are not conducive to good outcomes, they can use the STOP acronym, and I'll just go through it. The S stands for stop what you're doing. The T stands for take a few breaths and take some time. The O stands for observe what's going on and organize your thoughts. And the P is for once you've done the other three, you can proceed with what you were doing, if that is a suitable way to proceed, or to proceed down a new track in a different way, to proceed with a new way of doing it.
That's great.
Yeah, I love that, because we did discuss it the other day, and it actually makes absolute sense. So it gives people some structure to be in that place of mindfulness, and then to be able to make some choices about where they move forward to and how they do that.
Yeah, I think the non-judgment is a real important bit. Sorry about that, Deborah. No, the non-judgmental component, I know, really helps interrupt patterns of what people end up doing to themselves. Go on, Deborah, have your say.
I was just really saying what Kerry was saying. It's just a very succinct and simple little, and it's short as well. You know, some of these acronyms can be really long, and it really describes what you want to really, the emphasis of stopping whatever you're doing in order to start something new. So it just seems like a really straightforward, easy thing for people to remember and follow. It's really good.
And one of the reasons why I really believe in mindfulness, bringing it into therapy, especially for wellness, is because when I've done any form of professional development, any courses on addictions or even obsessive compulsive, anxiety, depression, eating disorders, etc., and so on, I've always noticed that the experts always bring in mindfulness. And so that tells me that then we should be bringing mindfulness, using mindfulness in our everyday experience. If you think about it, when something's not going right, is that because you're using some kind of judgment, or are you not mindful at that moment?
I agree. And I think the other thing, it's all about making something unconscious more conscious. And I think that's the step one, isn't it? I think you said, Nick, there about being aware of something not working for you. So that's step one. And I suppose that's step one of mindfulness, isn't it? Just start to become aware of where things may not be working to your benefit. So you can't change what you're not aware of.
Yeah, and I love the observer spaces where you actually get that distance. So you actually get to observe what you're doing in the moment. And with that no judgment side of things, where you kind of go, oh yeah, okay, what's going on there? How am I doing that? And being able to go, okay, I can see that. And being able to take those breaths, that ability to go, pause, take that breath, be mindful. It gives you that ability to be more strategic in what you're doing, so you can go to the next step, which is that progress. Either do what you were doing with an observation of how you can improve that, or perhaps be able to mindfully go, yeah, that wasn't working for me, that didn't serve me, I need to change it up and progress with a different pathway. So I love that whole STOP acronym.
Yeah.
I'm using a, sorry, Nick, I'll just tell you quickly. I recently had a client who we were doing some NLP around the critical voice and self-doubt. And right at the end, I suggested a challenge to my client. And the challenge was, even though you've got all these tools to challenge or to crowd out or to whatever devices and mechanisms you use internally, how about I challenge you for the next 7 days or so to, when these interruptions arise, instead of using challenges, be mindful, be present, be non-judgmental, and then see what happens with the critical voice. Because anything you do to oppose the critical voice, isn't that not you being judgmental? And isn't there then an internal fight ongoing? And so what would happen if you stopped that fight by not attending to it and be mindful of yourself at that time and non-judgmental? Be the observer, and let's see what happens thereafter. Nick?
Yeah, I was just going to say that mindfulness is central to regulating people's emotions, to giving them that moment to get clarity, where there's physiological changes taking place, where the neurotransmitters creating, a chemical soup in the brain, and the emotions are being triggered. Taking that time out when you become aware of behaviors and actions that aren't useful, and becoming aware of that is critical. And then not only becoming aware, because you can be aware that you're angry, but if you don't use a mindfulness component to it, that awareness very quickly dissipates and you get caught up in the action. So as soon as you become aware, that awareness leads to a mindfulness action, such as stopping what you're doing, focusing on your breathing, giving yourself 60 to 90 seconds of time out to allow the neurotransmitters to dissipate a little. And then you can get some more mental clarity coming in. And with that mental clarity, you can actually observe what's taking place. And in the observation, you can look for evidence that allows you to make better choices so you can achieve better outcomes. And the more someone does it, the more it becomes an automatic response, because once they start becoming aware and changing and disrupting patterns that don't work, it leads to a subconscious competence of that somewhat, and it happens less and less.
And, I'd like to add to that. Thanks for that, Nick. That was so wonderfully presented. There's so many different ways we could be mindful throughout the day. Even somebody may say, oh, well, I'll go for a walk. And then when I explore that further, I notice that what they take with them on the walk is not just their dog, it's all of their worries. And they'd never get to experience the blue sky or the birds going past. So I teach them consciously to go on a mindful walk when you're there, to actually notice the breeze against your face. I mean, this is all mindfulness.
Absolutely.
Or to notice each step that you take. Even a shower can be done mindfully. So many people can tell their stories of, I cry a lot in the shower, I worry a lot and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I have my shower. Yeah, I have a nice hot shower. But really, a mindful shower is actually feeling that hot water, being present, lathering up the soap, experiencing the entire experience, and not allowing your mind to wander to yesterday's issues or tomorrow's worries. So there's so many different, even washing dishes. So this is how I'd like individuals to know, how can we use mindfulness to go into a pathway for wellness? It's not in addition to the option of sitting still and being present and breathing. You can also be mindful when you're doing your daily activities. And that way you're not inviting any cloudy conversations.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I like about this acronym as well, Nick, it takes you through these different processes. And what you said there, Amanda, it starts with being in the moment, being really aware of a sensation. But, for example, in this one, it talks about breath work. There's a lot of evidence around breath work and about the efficacy of that. And that is true, of course, and we all use it, I'm sure, with clients at different times. However, it may not necessarily stop the rumination of those thoughts going on in people's minds. They can do the breath work and still be doing that in their head. So what's good about this process is the fact that that's integrated within the rest of the strategy, which is, being aware, then doing the breath work, then having that space, that gap between the stimulus and response, between what's happening and how you might choose to respond. I think in neuroscience, they talk about you've got like 20 seconds to make a different choice. It might even be less than that. So that you can then decide which way. You then open yourself up to that choice rather than being responsive. So I think that's one of the things that I take away about mindfulness, is just creating that gap for people to do things.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'd like to draw attention to something important that Amanda said earlier on, which was the non-judgmental approach to being an observer. And I think this is fundamental, absolutely fundamental in mindfulness, because when you are an observer, if you are judgmental, there's no real cognitive disassociation to the issue, and you are still part of the issue. But a non-judgmental, disassociated observation of what is going on gives a lot of clarity. And I just think that was super important that Amanda put out there, apart from the wonderful things I've heard my colleagues Kerry and Deborah say.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Go on. Yeah, go, Kerry. I'd like to hear from you.
What I was just going to say is it's interesting that people often just find themselves reacting constantly without taking that mindfulness approach, and being able to sort of allow people to have a process. So, we all allow ourselves to do the things that we do. But isn't it interesting that when you sit back and you actually say, I'm going to have a process where I'm going to put this into place and to instigate some change that I want in my life, and being able to have that ability to go, stop and follow that process. It's really powerful. I think it's important for people to know that they can have a process and just go, how do I do that? And allow themselves to go, this is how I do it. And as you said, Nick, as they start to get these patterns of behavior of doing that non-judgmental observation, and they continue to get that pattern, then they can do that anytime there's something that's coming up that's too much chatter or too much overwhelm. They can just go, stop, and go through that beautiful process that you described.
Automatic pilot. Automatic pilot is That's how we stop it, STOP. So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, someone who's wanting to stick to a nutritional plan or a weight loss plan, for example, quite often there's a lot of mindless eating. And what happens is when they overeat or they don't even realize they have finished eating a whole bag of something, that was done mindlessly. So for what you would say to that individual in future, so that you don't do that again, if that's what your goal is, then be mindful at that moment. Be present, be aware of what's going in your mouth. So that's how another way of interested individuals who are listening to this can say to themselves, okay, I can use mindfulness in my everyday life. Instead of smoking 20 cigarettes within, 6 hours, let's be mindful. Hold on, let me just focus on where I'm at, what I'm doing. Let me be present and decide, like Nick said at the beginning, is this the right decision I'll make right now? Only then, when we give ourselves the opportunity to be mindful, can we say, no, I won't have that now. Or if someone is starting to ruminate and then they notice it, well, they can say, well, look at the judgments I'm doing, because all rumination is supported by judgment, is it not? Take away that judgment, find yourself back into the present moment. What was I doing? And what is it I prefer to do? So if the people out there who are listening to this are noticing that, hey, mindfulness can help me in one way or another, then at least they know that they just research, they Google, there's apps on mindfulness. They can do mindfulness in therapy. Mindfulness is a great tool, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But sometimes people just need to be able to learn from somebody who knows how to help them step through those processes, because knowing an acronym doesn't necessarily give you the process of implementing that acronym. So I think it's important to do the research and also to find people who can help you if you are struggling with that, because the best thing to do is to find the best way and to start utilizing that as soon as possible, so you don't suffer and so you don't struggle, and so you can actually do the stop and start the mindfulness.
Have we ever noticed, I say this because I have a lot to do with children, that we may be walking with a child and we notice that the child notices the ant. The child will stop to touch the flower or just to even touch the dirt or to look and notice something that all of this we would probably with our busy minds not have noticed unless we too were mindful. So children are mindful until they're not. Guys, I think it was great getting together. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I'm really grateful for your time, and I hope we get online again so that we can share another topic.
Looking forward to it.
That'd be brilliant.
All right, I'll see you all soon.
So much.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.